Well, we're walking into Waikamoi Preserve. It's a 5,230 acre preserve that was established in partnership with Haleakala Ranch. And we began working with the ranch back in 1983, and it was one of the Nature Conservancy's first projects in Hawaii. And we're at the ecotone now, the division between the upper subalpine shrubland walking down into the native forest. It's a really beautiful part of the preserve. Back in the 30s, the ranch had a fence that ran right across here, and above the fence was a pasture. And below the fence was this beautifully intact native forest. And Haleakala Ranch did a great job of keeping the cattle out of that forest, and that's one of the reasons this forest exists here today. Waikamoi is habitat for two endangered forest birds that we still find here that we might even see today on this hike. That's the kiwi-keu, Maui parrotbill, and the crested honeycreeper. There are only about 300 kiwi-keu left in the entire world. They're all in this forest up on the northeast slopes of Haleakala. For the kohe, there are about 5,000 birds left. Once again, their habitat ranges overlap, and they occur in the same area on this northeast slope of Haleakala. This is one of the few places in the state of Hawaii where Maui's forest birds have been measured to either be stable or slightly improving over the last 30 years. And we hope that that's a result of the efforts we've made to fence the entire preserve and remove all the feral animals. And today, that 5,230 acres is protected from pigs and goats and cattle. And since we've taken those animals out, we've seen the understory in this forest, and you can see how rich it is with ferns. There are over 50 different species of fern in this forest. What we're looking at here is Cyanea horrida. And Waikamoi is one of the few places in the state where this species occurs. And it is a rare and endangered species now. I think it was recently listed in the last round. This particular plant was outplanted by PEP, the Plant Extinction Prevention Program. And it's a state program that tracks rare species throughout the state. And basically, they not only identify where some of these rare plants are, but they also replenish those plants back into the wild. But the trick there with outplanting these species back into the wild is to find a place that's protected from ungulates and some of the other threats that would just take these plants out. You can see that the understory is completely covered now, and when we first started working here back in the mid-80s, about 60% of the ground area was dug up by pigs. And if you can imagine that over an entire landscape of 5,000 acres, that is a lot of bare ground that gets washed into the ocean and covers our reefs with silt during heavy rains. So all of that stopped. There were also once thousands of goats on the more remote parts of Waikamoi, and all of those animals have been removed now. In fact, back in the early 90s, we removed all those animals. We've seen remarkable native vegetation recovery as a result of that, and restoration to the watershed. In fact, we've seen in some places, in the most remote parts of the preserve, we've seen the native grasses and shrubs begin to overtake some alien grasses that were established as a result of the grazing and browsing that had occurred for so many decades. The state's Natural Area Partnership Program is a very innovative program that provides $2 of state funding for every dollar of privately raised funds. Waikamoi Preserve has been in the NAPP program since 1985, and I can't say enough about how it's driven our ability to manage the forest here at a level that it needed to be managed at. We're talking about the crown jewels of Hawaii's forest, the places where our last of the least, best of the rest, and most intact forests continue to survive. And the cost of managing those areas is pretty high. It's, you know, $150,000 to $200,000 a mile to manage those areas. The state's Natural Area Partnership Program has provided that anchor funding that allowed us to do that. In 1991, as a catalyst from that funding, we were able to help form the East Maui Watershed Partnership in collaboration with the state of Hawaii. And that partnership ultimately became the model for partnerships across the state of Hawaii. The second was formed in the late 90s. Now we have 12 partnerships statewide that comprise 2.2 million acres across the state of Hawaii. And the state is only roughly 4 million acres. So we're talking about more than half the land area in the state being protected or beginning to be protected under these watershed partnerships. It was the state's Natural Area Partnership Program that provided the seed funding that allowed Waikamoi to be a key anchor site in this East Maui Watershed Partnership, gain the credibility of the landowners because we were sharing in the same problems and challenges they were, and we were able to marriage the interests of watershed protection with biodiversity protection, which created a big tent where a lot more people came to the table to support the work that we were doing. And today, without that continued funding, other places that we manage across the state wouldn't be managed nearly to the same ability they are today. And in fact, I think it's raised the bar for funding for our natural area reserve system, and people have begun to realize what can be accomplished with that kind of additional support in these natural areas.
We're incredibly fortunate here at Waikamoi Preserve to have the support of Haleakala Ranch First, who has that's their land. Our conservation easement is in perpetuity with Haleakala Ranch since 1983 when Waikamoi Preserve was formed, and they've just been immensely supportive. They understand the importance of the watershed for various reasons, for biodiversity, for water, for people to get out into the forest for aesthetic beauty reasons and recreation. So we really see eye to eye and we work really well together, and we're just so incredibly fortunate. And then of course with the new Waikamoi Preserve EMI addition that's expanding Waikamoi Preserve by over 3,700 acres, the East Maui Irrigation, which is a subsidiary of Alexander and Baldwin, they've just been really, really incredible. They've had that land for a while and they've known the importance of the native forest, and finally we were able to make this deal work out with this conservation easement that's making Waikamoi Preserve the largest private nature preserve in the state, we believe. And it's just an incredible partnership. We're so happy to have this underway and going on. When I walk into a native forest like this, first I get a huge sense of peace. You know, it's just incredibly quiet, and when you realize you're surrounded by these native species and these ancient ecosystems that the Native Hawaiians realized the importance of and utilized to the fullest extent, it's really almost overwhelming how important and how beautiful it all is. And then I have a 6-year-old son, and when I am able to take him into these preserves and these native ecosystems and explain to him how important it is, and you see how he really gets it. He's like, wow, Mommy, these are such different trees than those pine trees. And I explain the difference. And, having a 6-year-old actually get the conservation ethic and understand native versus non-native and, what the feral pigs are doing and the invasive plants are doing, it's so, so cool. And I feel so fortunate and a big sense of relief that it's being preserved for my son and for his kids and all the future generations.